Hey, what's up? My name is PJ, and in this video I want to talk to you guys about editing skin tones in Adobe Lightroom. Hope you enjoy. So if you shoot photos of people, skin tones are the most important thing. That's what's going to make your photo more believable. That's what's going to make it more flattering. That's what's going to make it more realistic. A good portrait, in my opinion, is all about getting the skin right. Now, I'm like most people. I've got the presets that I use, that I've collected over my time shooting and editing, and some of them I've got externally. Some of them are my own, some of them are a combination of the two, but we've all, if you've shot for some time and you've used Lightroom for a while, you have your own collection and your go-to. But I want to start from scratch here today, and I want to sort of reaffirm to myself that I can still do it, but I also want to show sort of what areas to focus on if you're trying to get good skin tones. So my general rule is I like to make them as neutral as possible, and then bump it up a little to the warm. Like if you can, hopefully not too orange, but tanned, natural, sort of like a golden feel to it. That's where I really like my skin tones. And I don't always get it right, but I'm just going to go through a few sort of like Lightroom principles to help you understand skin tones and practice editing them, because whacking on someone else's preset is one thing, but being able to replicate it and tweak it or recreate it yourself, that's a whole other skill altogether. So let's do it. For now, I'm going to leave the white balance. I'm going to leave the exposure. I'm just going to focus on the tones in the face. And I'm not even going to do... actually, no, I will do colors. I'll do colors first. So this is a photo of a gentleman called Jai. Jai plays drums in a band called Death in Bloom. Super cool heavy band, and he's also a very talented videographer, photographer, drone operator. He worked in a media bus with me at Unify, and he's just a super lovely guy to hang out with. So I'm going to edit this photo of Jai. If you're watching this, Jai, I hope you don't mind. I didn't ask your permission. But anyway, let's start in the HSL panel down here. So I'm going to grab this little target here, and I'm going to select the skin tones, and I'm going to drag them up because I want to make them a little less pink and more orange. So I'm going to drag those up a little bit on the hue. Let's give it a little bit more saturation in those reds and oranges as well. Maybe a bit more in the yellow. And let's see what the pink does. Let's see what the magenta does. Actually, not that much for the skin tones, strangely enough. But yeah, let's check that out quickly. Yeah, it's worked. Taking some of the pink out. Let's do luminance. Let's bump it up a bit, just a little. So I think that's a pretty good start. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this tone curve. You could also click this little icon and you can do it with the sliders, but I think it's more, you can be more precise with the curve. So like a lot of people do, I drag up this black point a little bit to just help draw out a little bit more dynamic range. Then I'm going to put in a little bit of an S curve. So drop down those low mids and up the high mids. This is just sort of like a general shape of the tones, and then we're going to come up to this panel here, and now that we've got sort of everything sitting relatively where it needs to be, I'm going to back off these highlights because it's a little hot coming in on from the right side of the face. So let's back these off. Highlights, we can, not too much, we can drop down the whites too, and like I usually do with my portraits, I'm going to bring the shadows out and the blacks down because I like it to be a finer contrast. I don't want it to be a sort of a messy, thick contrast. I want it to be, quite fine. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to the camera calibration. I'm just winging this, by the way. I don't have any instructions in front of me or anything, but I'm just winging this. So these, I've mentioned them in a video before, the camera profiles and the, I'm not even sure what you call these sliders, but the RGB calibration, this is probably the most overlooked, I think, in not only correcting bad light, but skin tones as well, because this is how, my understanding is that, my phone's ringing. My understanding is that this is how Lightroom interprets what your camera has spit out, which is the raw file. So let's play with the red tones. Obviously they're going to affect the skin a lot. So let's make them a bit more orange, and then just drop down a separate saturation to make it feel natural still. Pretty good. It's a little green, so let's change those green tones. Bump them up a little bit. I'm going to bump it up a bit more, and then drop that saturation a little bit again. Cool. And now I actually think that most of the adjustments in the skin tones, or like probably one of the biggest things, is this blue slider here, because you're taking or adding more blue into the skin. So obviously blue is like the opposite of red, I'm pretty sure. Blue is the opposite of red. So if you take the blue out, you're putting more red in. If you add it, you're taking the red away. So let's maybe just drop that a little, and we'll drop the saturation too. So I think that's a pretty neutral, flattering skin tone so far. Let's do a little bit of white balance now. Actually, do you know what? I'm just going to test it out on neutral. I want to see how it looks in neutral. I think I prefer that better. So I've changed the profile to neutral from standard. You can also try portrait. I think portrait tends to be a little bit more, actually, do you know what? That's not bad. I was going to say portrait tends to be a little bit more on the red side, but it's not too bad. If we drop down that red saturation, that actually looks pretty good. So let's just fiddle with the white balance now, because I feel like we've done the fine tuning. Now we can do the more broad adjustments. So I'm going to warm that up a little. I do really like, so this light coming from the right hand side seems to be a little bit warmer than the fill light or the rest of the light in there. So I'm going to bump the temperature a little bit. I'm going to drop that tint a little bit to take out some of the pink. I think that's pretty good. Let's increase that exposure, and we'll take some more highlights out. Pretty good, I reckon. Nice and natural. We can remove chromatic aberration. That's just a good thing to do always. Profile corrections, I've gone off this a little bit. I used to do it on every single photo, but with this lens in particular, the 35mm, it just it doesn't correct distortion too much. It just takes out the vignette, and I actually don't mind the vignette on this lens, so I'm going to leave it now. The next thing I'm going to do is probably sharpen it. So let's have a close look. Isn't it nice when your photo is just like perfectly in focus? I think this is pretty much as good as it's going to get. He's got glasses on. Maybe like his eyebrows are a bit sharper than his eyes, but that's pretty damn nice at 1.8. That's a really nice focus. Anyway, sharpening. I've been through this before. Hold down the Option key, drag it up, and you can see in black and white, you can see in monochrome the effect that your sharpening's having. I like to go pretty heavy on the sharpening, and then I mask it all out. So yeah, the areas that need to be sharp, the edges, they are nice and sharp, and then everything else stays soft. I think that's pretty good. That's a pretty flattering skin tone. It looks like a nice sunny day. It looks like Jai has seen some sun, and I'm pretty sure at this point it was raining. I can't remember. It was pretty dreary over this weekend, I have to tell you, at Unify. Now, one more thing that I will add to this is grain, and I have never ever been a fan of grain, but I've been looking at a couple of people's work, in particular, Ian Edwards. You may be watching Kurt. If you are, I love your style and I love your edits. And also Max Wilkinson, who goes by Mulholland. And one thing, it's really hard to describe, but one thing that I notice about their photos, which I really like, is it all, it's flat in a very pleasing way. And I don't mean that it's not contrasty, but I mean it's all tied together. The edit is all tied together with grain, I'm pretty sure. The grain, not only does it smooth out the skin tones, which is, it seems counterproductive, it seems counterintuitive to add noise to make skin look better, but it just makes everything more uniform. And in only the last couple of weeks, I've actually come to like some digital grain. So I'm going to add a bit of that in. Let's go to about, I don't know, 25, 30, somewhere around there. And it's hard to say, it's probably not going to come across onto YouTube, but I think it actually ties the photo together. It makes it more endearing. It makes the bokeh, it makes the out of focus areas look more smooth as well. And you just don't notice the imperfections in the skin as much because everything has this nice quality to it. So I've always been kind of against grain, to be honest, because I think I got it from Jared Polin. I remember him saying in one of his videos, why would you add grain to a photo that you're paying all this money with all this gear to get as clean and smooth as possible, which I always used to agree with. But I have to say, looking at some of these guys who I really admire their work, I think grain is a pretty big part of that. I could be wrong, but that's what I get from it, and so I've started to do that in my photos. But there it is. I'll show you before and after. Here is before and after. Before and after. So yeah, it's nothing too drastic really, but it's just a very flattering, very neutral, but a little on the warm side. I always try and make my light golden instead of too orange. And in the past, I've definitely been guilty of too orange. And if I'm being lazy, you probably will see some orange, too much orange on my skin tones, but this is where I like it. And I'm just sort of proving, like I said at the start, a few things that you can think about. And I'm not just doing it to demonstrate, I'm also proving to myself that I can do this still, because I hardly ever edit from scratch anymore. I've got my presets, bang them on, a couple little tweaks. I think that's what everyone does, to be honest. But if you understand how to do it on your own, I think you'll be much, much better using your presets. So just quickly, we did the HSL panel. We started with the hue and saturation, a little bit of luminance, but didn't really do that much. We then did the tone curve. We did the camera calibrations, and I think it was just the main tone panel after that. White balance, sharpening, grain, Bob's your uncle, Flo's your auntie, and Tinty next door neighbor. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a big fat thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. I'll also leave in the description a link to Kurt and Max's photos. Check them out, get inspired. I know I have been. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.